Well, hello. Every gal needs a cowboy hat.
Scanning the room, you look for a familiar face. Everyone is a stranger. Your heart's racing, you feel nauseous. New plan. You meet 4 new people. Okay, 3. 2? You can handle 2. And then you think, I hate this. This just feels so fake. And before you talk to even 1 new person, you're looking for the nearest exit.
Okay. Crazy. Yo, who invited this chick?
My heart races when I walk into a room full of strangers, too. Except it's not anxiety, it's excitement. I'm not thinking networking quota. I'm thinking, look at all these stories. And I get so pumped about talking to people that I don't know.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Hello. How are you? Welcome. My name is Gail Robertson, and I am Chief Curiosity Officer with GailNow. I help manufacturers both tell and share their story using a simple 3-step process, which is sign up, suit up, and show up. And show up we will today. I try to always find guests that not only show up, but also help other people show up. And today's guest will be offering some great tips. He's actually also is a former Marine, so he's going to be showing us the Marine's way of how to show up in social media marketing for everyone in manufacturing and even outside manufacturing. But we're going to be talking about some specific tips about how it can apply in the manufacturing world and specifically in plastic injection molding, which is such a fun area. Okay, so without too much more talking, I want to bring the one, the only, Jim Fuhs is in the house.
Hey, great, Gail. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I want to start by saying welcome to Jim, because Jim and I go back a bit to, we first met actually on another platform, another social media platform, which is Twitter. And I believe it was Twitter Smarter. I think that's
yes. Yeah, I think you were a guest possibly that first time, because I think you've been a guest before.
Actually, I don't think I have, actually. You know what? That's one thing, Madeline, I haven't been asked yet, but one day maybe I've been, I used to be a lot more active in commenting. And then now I have my USA Manufacturing Hour Twitter chat on Thursdays as well. But I love Madeline. She's, learned so many great tips from her and learned so much from Twitter.
Yes, definitely. And I think that, a lot of people sleep on Twitter in the sense that it seems like a lot of times it's like, oh, Twitter's just such a, a negative cesspool. And that hasn't been my experience. I think it kind of goes back to, it doesn't matter what platform you are on, it's how you manage it and how you manage expectations that are going to affect you. It's, it's kind of like, is it the gym room rule of, the 5 people that you surround yourself with is kind of what you become the average of. It's the same thing on social media. If you want to get better on social media, surround yourself with better people. And I think that's part of the challenge that for people in general is like, block people that you don't like their message if they're constantly being trolls. I mean, they're going to be out there. And I think sometimes, don't they say, Gail, if people aren't hating on you, you're not doing enough to be successful.
Yeah. And I love that it is about, whatever platform, whatever event, whatever job, there's always going to be people, naysayers, and people often even wanting to, knock you down and things. So yes, I agree. I love Twitter, and I see some of that negativity on Twitter, but I also like to see different views. So for me, it's interesting to kind of tune into that, but also, tune out as well. And so I think that's a great tip, especially, you know, when I'm working with people in manufacturing, often they have a reluctance to get involved because they think, oh, social media, they think of what it used to be like, you know, and I hear this many times. It's like, well, I don't want to just, you know, read about what people are having for their lunch. And I'm like, that's kind of what happened before. There still is, once in a while you'll see it on Instagram, but it's changed dramatically. Jim, before we, I just want to go to our comments, and we'll just do a quick hello to everyone, and welcome everyone to please drop in where you're coming from. And then we're going to come back and hear a little bit about who Jim is and a little bit of context, but always like to go to who's visiting here today. So we have right off the top, we have, well, you know, Tim of the Tim and Jim Show, Jim and Tim Show. I always get those. It's your show together. Welcome, Tim. And then we have, Brian Gignac. Hello, afternoon, another wacky Wednesday with Gail. Yes, thanks. You know, Brian is the new sales manager at Cavalier Tool and Manufacturing. And Brian is really a champion for leading the way. And I know at one point, if any of the other salespeople listen, we'll bring them along to learn and grow on social media, because it is the way. Then we have, Tim saying, show up. Thank you, Tim. And we have Katie McDermott. Hey, everyone. So excited to be here today to hear from a Marine. And her son is a Marine. I believe that's, I got that. So, yeah, so she was excited. And Katie is another fun manufacturing person. So it's always good to have Katie in the house. She says, shout out to my Marine. Shalom. But there we go. There we go. That's a hello. Shannon is here as well. Shannon is another loyal watcher, follower. Thank you, Shannon, always showing up and supporting in the comments. So thank you. Actually, thanks to everybody who just drops a hello in the comment. It really helps to just know who's out there and who's we'll skip over. There's some networking going on. So I think we now, Whitney. Oh, wait a minute. We missed. Let's go back. Chris, Rockstar. Oh, Chris. I got a shout out from Chris earlier on a show about my TikTok. So thank you, Chris. And we'll be talking about that today because Chris was on an earlier live show with Jim. So we're going to be talking about podcasts and live shows. So stay tuned for that, because we're going to do a little wrap up about that. Whitney. So happy Wednesday, tuning in from Sugar Land. I just love that name, don't you? Sugar Land, Texas. I just want to go there because of that name. She's saying hello to everybody. We have, we have a new person in today that is also from Cavalier, Tal Chudner. I finally, after years of knowing him, I think I've got his name right, his last name right. So welcome, Tal. Tal is someone who also shows up. Tal is, doing a lot of work with Cavalier on a lot of retention and, working with the employee, both recruiting and retention. And Tal has worked as many transferable skills as well. So thanks for stopping by, Tal. And Mike Hicks, he said, hi, Gail, glad to be here. I canceled my lunch with Sergeant Carter to be here with yourself and Jim.
Awesome.
All right. Okay. So back to our regularly programmed schedule here. So Jim, can you give maybe a bit of a synopsis about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel. I've been retired for almost 13 years, and as I like to say, I do marketing the Marine Corps way. I, am a digital marketing consultant. I do a couple live streams, the Tim and Jim Show, as well as Dealcasters, and also Dealcasters is a podcast. And as announced earlier today, the Tim and Jim Show is going to soon become a podcast. So I'm putting it out there again, Chris and Tim. So we have to do it now that we've talked about it a couple times. But I also do a lot of remote virtual production. And I think that's a part of my business I don't necessarily talk a lot about. But when you've done hundreds of live streams on camera, and then you start to do stuff behind the camera, you really start to see a lot of things. And, part of it, Gail, like we're talking before the show, is not only showing up, but suiting up when you are doing these things. And I think, that's one of the things that I think there's still a lot of room for improvement across the globe, not just the board. And I think even in, the manufacturing space, there's some opportunities there for manufacturing companies to show up and suit up with virtual, video.
Thank you for that. And also, Jim and I, we met through Twitter, but then we connected through Global Tea Break, another virtual networking. So through the pandemic, you know, there's so many opportunities that I saw, and I think you saw as well, Jim, because we worked on also an event with the Canadian Association of Mold Makers where we did a 3-part series, and you helped with the behind the scenes, as well as Tim helped one of the shows. And, it really, I think, I guess I want to ask you this, do you think that pushed everything forward in terms of digital so that more people saw the value and got up to speed a bit more than maybe if we hadn't hit that?
Definitely. I definitely think it's funny because I want to say it was probably about 2018, 2019, where Cisco was saying that, video was going to be, X% of content. And we're still not there. But now I think because all of a sudden people, were put in a situation where, like Zoom exploded, right? It's like Zoom is almost like it's a verb. I don't know. It's a noun. Maybe it's an adjective. But that has forced people to have to get on camera for their jobs, or even kids
Mhm.
going to school, unfortunately, have had to do things with Zoom. And so I think that, we have been pushed into that, but we're also finding the shortfalls of getting pushed into that. And, some of that is, Chris and I were talking earlier on the Tim and Jim show about, one of the biggest things that people miss out on is audio, and how
Mhm.
important audio is. Because if you've got bad audio, and how many times have you been on a Zoom call and the people are, you're getting the echo feedback, and it just, it's almost like when somebody scratches a chalkboard, you know?
Yes, audio. And of course, working in manufacturing, this is such a big issue
Yeah.
because I know as someone who's been on plant floors and, normally if I'm at an event, I can just pull up my phone, take video, but no, not on a plant floor. There's just, even if there's no, like if it's shut down for a bit, there still is that kind of hum often. So, um, what do you recommend in terms of how people can do audio differently?
Well, one thing is, so I'm using this dynamic microphone here from Shure, and so what that means is I have to almost be right on top of it for my audio to get picked up. So there are microphones like that you could plug into your phone. Even I think the one you're using, the Audio Technica, and this one here, this is the uh, Samson Q2U. This is about you can get this on sale for $60 US. I don't know what that equates to in Canadian, but it's got both USB and XLR. So I can, with the USB,
Mhm.
get a uh, connector that allow me to connect it into the cell phone. And so if you wanted to, do a recording and you just get long enough cord that then you can be, passing it back and forth to talk to the person, and you'll get rid of a lot of that background noise, which can really take away from the session. And so even if you're at a trade show, right? A lot of times now that trade shows are coming back, you're missing out on an opportunity as well to make some videos, talking with the experts in the field, that you can then repurpose later to really get some of those things that doesn't always come across, in a blog post, because I think, Gail, one of the things we both realize is that video, like right now, and it's great when we're live because people are able to interact with us,
Mhm.
is that you're getting a better sense for that person. The message can be delivered differently, right? That's where, doing things like Toastmasters is something that I, highly recommend. And, truth be told, I'm a Toastmaster. So, right. They're not paying me to say that, but it's definitely helped me because if we become better speakers and get more confident, we can deliver our message clearer, right? And sometimes you've got to do, you want to do a 2 to 5 minute video, right? So you need to practice, kind of have a script. Don't read it, right? Because we want to hear the real you. And I think as as my friend Mike Alton would say, speak the way you normally speak. Don't get into this like, geek. I mean, sometimes maybe the geeky techie stuff works, but speak in plain English so people can, or whatever language, so people can understand you.
You know what? That is so valuable, Jim, because often people want to sometimes practice so much, and you need to practice, but sometimes when you're doing videos, you practice till you think you should know the content. And now I went to Heroic Public Speaking, which was a very intensive, long program. And one of the things, you want to know the content so well that you don't need to read a script. And I also say this the same way when you're doing a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, this is my speech on. Please do not just read on your PowerPoint slides. If for all of humankind, please know your content enough that, because I've been to so many sessions where someone puts up their power and they just read word for word on the power, and they
Oh
put
my
the
gosh.
whole
I
talk on. I'm like,
Yes.
please
hate
hire
those.
Jim. Please hire someone to help you with that. And
Well, I think what people forget, and I learned this from this this gentleman in the National Speakers Association, and he was talking about when you do presentations, right? Like if you want to show a slide,
mhm,
right? That's great. But then turn the slide off, get people to focus back on you, because you're right. People will read the slide. And so what I see happen in, especially like say on Zoom, is people like, well, I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Now they're just like this little teeny box next to the PowerPoint. Do you really need that PowerPoint? There are some great presentation software like Prezi, which is Mac or PC, or Ecamm if you are a Mac user, that can allow you in doing a little practice, right? Because you shouldn't be doing this stuff last minute, that you can use tools, as an example, like Ecamm, to do things. So as an example, if I wanted to and I'm gonna do this real quick. You didn't know I was gonna do this. So I'm set up where I can hit a button on my Stream Deck, and now look, I can show you and
cool.
demonstrate this. So let's say I'm a manufacturer and I want to talk about and describe something. It's easier to do it this way, and then I can just go back when I'm done to this, right? I didn't have to take over the screen. People can still see your reaction. And
Mhm.
so I think those are the sort of things, the tools that are out there that can make it more engaging, right? Because I think that's the other thing is, if it's live, you want engagement, even if it's not live. If it's a recorded video and we're doing repurposing, we want to strike the viewer with like, wow, how did they do that? Or, oh, now I understand what they're talking about. So I think, and it's not rocket science, right? I mean, I'm a Marine. I was able to figure it out.
I love that. I need to, you know what? It was like magic. That's next on my list to do more of that, because I've been watching some of your things, and with that, how you do that with like show a video clip. That's very cool. So, okay, Inger, we're gonna have to add that to our list. So, yes, I do want to do a shout out right now to Inger. Inger was in the comments as well as helping behind the scenes, and Inger also helps people suit up through with LinkedIn and getting people with their. So, if anyone is interested, please let me know. We often, are working together on some of these projects, and I really like that idea of what you said about adding that interactive part, because I've also showed up at some events, virtual events, where that's what happens. A person up little screen, and the whole screen's the PowerPoint, that is not very engaging sometimes because it's just graphs. And then the other thing is, I'm trying to read the graph and what does it say?
Right. Yeah, so that's another great point, Gail. A lot of times what we're not thinking about as a presenter is, it's like, it's one thing if I'm looking at the presentation on my desktop. It's
Mhm.
another thing when I'm, as an example, the people here watching us on LinkedIn, if I were to share this very busy slide, they're not going to be able to see all the details. So it's almost like, if you want all the information in the slides, I can send them to you, right? There you go. There's a great way to connect with people. But
Right.
I'm going to talk about the key points. Talk about the key points. Send them if you want to call it the details later. Send them a PDF if you don't want them to have, the original document. Because I think, that's another area where, you got to think about where you're presenting. You're not presenting in a large auditorium where there's this giant screen. And so I think when it gets into technical things, we need to think, how can we make it simpler but effective? And so, sometimes maybe it's just hitting those key points. Like, I don't need to see a graph to know that, sales are up or down, right? You can just say that, sales are up 20% over the last quarter, or orders are this. Just say it,
Yeah.
right? The graph maybe is more powerful in a different thing, but when you're on video, it's like you sometimes are going to lose the people. And I think that's where, like even with StreamYard, right? You can throw a banner in. So you could put a banner in that says that key bullet point for people. So if people are watching, they can see that bullet point. So I think that's the other thing. And then of course, one of the things too, we talk about showing up, but also I think we talked about suiting up, right? So Gail and I are not big fans. As you can see, neither one of us has a virtual background. I know some people think I do, but that is a vinyl brick wall. I've done several remote productions with large companies, and because they're so focused on, oh, we want everyone to look the same, they have them use these virtual backgrounds that really are not pleasing to the person, right? Because they don't have the right lighting, because they may be remote. So now they're getting cut off. They're wearing the wrong colors, so they start to turn invisible. And so if you've got a mess behind you, take the time to clean it up, or find a new place to do your presentations. Or you could just get yourself like a backdrop that you can hang off of, even like a rolling, like, if you want to call it, curtain rod or shower rod on wheels, and bring it in and out if you can't move things. I think that's, another thing that people get caught up in that, or if the company really wants, they could make everybody a vinyl backdrop that, they can fold into a thing, ship it to them as well. And then I think, it goes back to your audio. Audio is so critical to doing this stuff. And, like I said, you don't have to start out with the microphone I have here that want to thank my friends at Shure for providing us. You can start with something simpler. Even with the camera, start with your cell phone is an amazing device. If you don't have a webcam, but you've got a cell phone, like we've talked about before, Gail, you can use a product like Camo. That's how I actually did that overhead shot. That's an iPhone using Camo, so I can zoom in and out with that from my desktop, so I don't have to touch the phone. These are all easy ways to get a video. So now, you're on the shop floor, right? You can use that camera. Now, here's another idea, and this is something that I've been doing more frequently. Let's say you want to go into the shop and you want to show something, right? A process or whatever. Or I guess there's sometimes people say process, depending on where they're from. Record it, right? Record the video, but don't talk. And now bring that video in and do a voiceover, right? So as an example, if I were to go back to this view, this could have been a recording underneath it of where I'm doing something, and now I'm talking about it. So you're not hearing that there was all this noise going on when so like you think in advance, like, okay, I'm going to show all these angles. And so now I bring in that video with me on camera talking about it. That's another way for us to overcome the issues of a noisy shop floor. So we don't always have to have the person standing next to it. Maybe we just do a recording of it, right? And then we figure out a better way to bring in the audio. It's kind of like, okay, now I'm going to narrate what you just saw. So I think that's, for manufacturing, could be a great way to show things and get, away from that noisy audio.
I'm working on that project right now, actually, because I have a video of a machine, and it's been taken, and it's a very simple video. So this is the other thing I want to suggest to people, is that, don't overthink it sometimes too. Like, get the good video, and then, and as Jim said, audio is key. So you can do a voiceover. So if you have that note, like, just do a sound over. So Lots of simple things to do, but simple isn't always easy, right? Simple. I mean, it's about getting it done.
Yeah.
That's
It's kind of setting up that flow, right? Figuring out what are the steps we need to do. Okay. What is it we're trying to focus on with the video? Are we trying to show the steps, as an example that we go through to create this widget so we can do all that recording and then even taking a tool like Canva, right? You can cut that video up and do splicing with it. And so StreamYard even has, I know, a view where you could play the video, right? It still doesn't need to have any audio going, and then you could bring your picture in at the bottom left, and you could be talking about it while the video is playing, right? And people can hear what you're saying. And so right there is a way you could even have, I think you can add, I think they all show up at the bottom of the screen, but that would be potentially a way to, as it's going, and you can loop these videos if you want to as well. That's become a new feature that they've added as well for the 10-minute or less videos. But you can also upload a much longer video if you want to do the upload feature. So I think that's a great way in the manufacturing space to kind of start explaining things and figure out, because a lot of times like, oh, but it's so loud out there. How are we going to do this and do that? And I thought what you did with when we did that project earlier, right? We pre-recorded stuff and we played it. Then we brought in the live speaker. I thought that was a great way as well. As like, don't think that it all has to be live, and sometimes you'll be able to get better video done that way.
And for those of you who weren't at that training, I'll just explain what we did. We had a 3-part training. We had 3 different sessions. And now a lot of this comes too from my background as a journalist, is that I pre-interviewed some people. So instead of having, 6 people on the show, because sometimes that can be a lot too, if you have too many people on a show. So I had my 3 or 4 guests, but then I would show a clip from someone else. And sometimes it would be pointing to the next week's event as well. So there are things that you can do with pre-record. And now asking for a friend, if someone wanted to test this out on StreamYard, would the best way to do that is to do just a record instead of go live and test out some of the things? Can you test out a lot of these things?
Okay. Yeah, there's a couple ways to do it. One would be to go ahead and do record only, or what I have done is set up a private Facebook group. Right. And if you want to test going live, so you can test some of your audio and other things, that's another way, just to see how is everything coming across. Maybe you could have a couple people in that test group kind of watch it and say, oh yeah, everything looks good, sounds good. You can get some, interaction. So setting up a test group is a great way to do experiments as well. And I'll do that sometimes when I'm incorporating a new piece of tech or something. It's like, okay, how is this looking and sounding when I'm broadcasting? And so I think that's another thing is, private groups are a great way to test. Because you're still gonna, with StreamYard, right? You'll still get the recording. You could even, if you wanted to, Gail, because you may want to be able to download the file, because I know not all levels of StreamYard I think provide the recordings. I'm not, but you could like go live to your YouTube channel, private or unlisted, and then download the file so you can kind of take a look at it afterwards, or just rewatch it as well. That's another way you could do it, using YouTube as kind of your repository.
Great idea. Thank you. Now I know we're going to go back to our studio audience in a minute, because there are some people listening here that will be, okay, they're eating this up and want to know how to do it. And there's some people going, I'm sure right now going, what? Because, and so I want to talk a little bit about, if you don't want to do your own show, you don't want to do a live show, you can also be a guest. So and I know you and Chris Stone were talking about that, about, I think, guesting on shows as well. So do you want to talk a bit about that, about being a guest on podcasts and how important that is, and maybe how to prepare to be a great guest on a show? Let's come back to that. So let's talk about how to prepare, some tips, because I find this too, like there's guests that come on, like what are things that they can do to be a great guest, like lighting, sound. We'll talk about that, but let's go to our studio and let's go back, because I see there's quite a bit of chatter. We won't go through all the comments because there's a bit of networking going on, which is great. So let's go back to, I think we left off at, where did we leave off, Inger? On, I think somewhere we talked about, we had Chris and Katie and Whitney are all talking. I think we got up to, I want to welcome, yes, Inger is here in the house. Yeah, so we had, yeah, oh, that's, I think I did that by mistake. Okay. Okay, we definitely want, Mike is in the house. Jesus, there we go. You know, the joys of live is that I love it because they said there's no editing. You just like, so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Inger. Where do we leave off with comments? Because sometimes when I'm trying to help, it doesn't help. So we we do have a comment here from Shannon who said, she says, I love chatting with everyone at the Global Tea Break. I met Jim there and I was amazed at all the great things he does. Yes. If you haven't been to the Global Tea Break, you can Google it, or we'll try to remember to drop a link for that. But that is a great, now that started, I think, did it start before the pandemic? I'm forgetting it. Yeah. Anyways, it's a great international event. I know I got invited early on. In fact, I think from day one, I've been pretty much involved with that. And it's just amazing how, internationally people are gathering together. So, a new person is in the house is John Buglino. Hello, John. Hello, friends. So John is someone who also shows up in manufacturing world. So thank you, John, for showing up today and saying hello. We have lots of back and forth between Whitney and John. And John says he has that mic. So that's kind of cool that someone has the mic that you have. Now, yes, David Chrysler, the king, #king of process. So we have anointed David with this title because we know he probably, eventually he's going to have to absorb it into his headline on LinkedIn, but we all call him the king of process because he is a person who brings so much light to the world when it comes to using process in a very simple way. He's not someone who's going to load you up on every, overload you with how to get your process together. So welcome, David. This is much more, this is my kids. This is much more informative than lunch would have been with Sergeant Carter. Well done, thought out, and presented, Jim. Thank you. Yes, Jim is definitely someone who thinks out things. And I would recommend if you are ever doing an event and want some help in the background, now Inger and I do, but if I was ever doing a larger event, Jim can do all those bells and whistles too, and adds in all the fun stuff. Now, when you showed that video, I just want to check, that was using your phone with camo?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. So now I may consider bringing camo back because I didn't want it as my main source, but if I want to add something in, I might do a test with that because camo is very cool. There's a free version and a paid version. So,
right.
Where's the next comment we have here that's up? We've got, I know we had, let's see. Oh, they're just another brick in the wall, Jim. Interesting. We have, love the idea of a portable backdrop. Yes. And backdrops, I will say further to what Jim said. Yes. When you see people kind of fading in, it reminds me of that. Remember like the Simpsons where he's that meme where he goes into the back. Every time I see those backdrops where people start disappearing. Right. So yeah, if you're going to use that, you've got to have a really like green screen and do it really. So John says eCam for Mac. That's another route to go. A little more work involved with that, right? Like I was thinking what eCam, but I personally like StreamYard. So create scenes. You can also use wave video editing, live streaming. Okay. That was you, Jim. You're everywhere.
Yes.
Sorry this question, but this curious mind wants to know, with all this great tech audio info, why are Jim's lips out of sync with the audio? Just an observation. Is there a delay?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. I have heard that there have been some issues with StreamYard. I've seen some people in the StreamYard community talking about how there has been some audio sync issues. And that's one of those things that you have to kind of figure out sometimes, and could be, the internet could be causing issues, and so that's where sometimes with the recording, at least you can fix that. It's called drift, and you can kind of fix it and get the stuff to line up in post-production.
Yeah, and my guess is a lot, maybe, I mean, we are on overload probably on internet use too, right? So there's and I have noticed it's sometimes, but not all the time. So great question, Mike. I love when people ask these questions because sometimes, people see something and they don't want to, call it out. And I'm always like, hey, let's call it out and we'll maybe ask StreamYard about it. It might be something to see where things are at and if is that going to be something to be corrected. Okay. Hey, you two. Russ is in the house. Hello, Russ. Thank you for stopping by. Russ is another machine when it comes to live. Do you see he is, I can't keep up. He has so many different shows and he is on point. That's for sure. Let's see. What else do we have? Next comments. We'll just zip through. So thanks, Jim. If when I'm ever live there, if when I'm ever live, there is a 7-second delay. Thanks for the show, Gail. Glad I could catch this guy. Thank you. Yes. And David says, Russ Hedge in the house. Great to see you. Have any good manufacturing conversations today? Yeah, I'm sure he's, it's always good when he stops by. Let's see. David says, Gail, I use Camel Paid running into OBS as my main setup and record. Works like a champ. Streamer is great for the stream, but I find too many issues like you guys are saying with sync and quality for everyday content pushing. Okay. Yeah, I guess, here's the other thing I'm going to say about that. There's so many tools and you can get overwhelmed. This has happened to me and I go back and forth. Should I use, and what happens is, and David, I'm sure you know this, paralysis by analysis. Sometimes you become like, I won't do anything. So what I've decided is, StreamYard works for me. It's a easier process to use. It's a simpler tool for what I need. And that's what you have to really look at is what are your needs and don't overcomplicate it.
Jim? I think that's a great point, Gail. I mean, I've been using StreamYard since 2019. And I still feel like we'll say for the majority of people that are especially getting started, StreamYard works great. I mean, it's 3 pillars, right? Ease of use, stream stability, professional looking streams. I think OBS is a great tool, but it's also got its learning curve because it is free software. You don't have that support that you can go like with StreamYard. We can go like, hey, we've noticed, right? Other people are starting to notice there's been, to Dave's point, sync issues with audio, what's going on there. And, people can kind of try to, check that out. Of course, because I always kind of, laugh because people's like, well, it could be your internet. Well, I'm on Ethernet and my, internet speed is like 900 megabytes up and down. So I know it's not my internet and I'm hardwired. That's another thing to consider. Can you hardwire your computer? But I also, to your point, new tools come out all the time. It can be overwhelming. I've tested about 5 or 6 different streaming programs and there's new ones coming out all the time. And so sometimes it's like, okay, what is it I need to do? And so we'll go back to the whole guest thing. Like that's why sometimes maybe instead of starting your own show, you go be guest on other people's shows, because if you're wanting to share your knowledge, there's lots of people out there that are looking for that knowledge you share. And so how do you do that? Gail talks about it all the time with LinkedIn, right? What are you doing on LinkedIn to make people aware of you, whether it's posting, whether it's commenting? I would even say you don't have to have LinkedIn Live, right? You can post up to 10-minute videos on LinkedIn. So maybe you do a video recorded, upload it to LinkedIn talking about something that will get people interested in you, right? We have to kind of put stuff out there in order for people to know about us, because otherwise, and sometimes I almost say it's kind of like social proof. Is that a good way to put it, Gail? I mean, you're doing that with TikTok, and I think that's getting you some attraction.
And going back to using different tools and platforms for different reasons. So each tool I use, each platform I use for different reasons, and I use different content. What I'm going to do on TikTok, I won't necessarily do on Twitter, or I wouldn't do on LinkedIn. And there's things I do sometimes on an Instagram story, and sometimes I do an Instagram post. It's, I'll do a boomerang. I'm out and people see this. Sometimes I'll do a boomerang, with the drink, and I put that on a story. It's not necessarily going to stay forever, and it disappears after 24 hours, right? So that's really key, is to know, like, you don't have to be everywhere. And like Jim said, getting on shows. And this is where I usually come in from a PR, and, getting people suited up to be ready to go on shows is so key, because there's so much opportunity to get your name out there, your brand out there, but you have to be willing to step into the spotlight.
And
And
Gail, do you think some of that, and I know you're supposed to ask the question, but I'm going to ask you the
yeah,
question because you are the VR background. Do you think part of it is like make sure you're in the right spot, kind of what you hit to? It's like if I'm in manufacturing, I don't think Facebook is where you need to be spending your time.
right. No, I would agree. LinkedIn, right now, I would say anybody that I'm working with, and Inger and I are working on this right now, where we're getting manufacturing people up and running on their LinkedIn. And a lot of it's getting your profile optimized. So this is starting at base zero, because a lot of LinkedIn trainers are already jumping in and wanting you to, like, they're 10 miles down the road. Where we're working on in manufacturing is getting profile optimized, getting them up to speed. Yeah, Facebook is fine for some things, Instagram is fine, but LinkedIn for manufacturing, if you want to build connections, it's a bit like, where you're going to go networking. Do you go to a chamber of commerce event, or do you go to, a local bar kind of thing? And then what kind of conference do you go to? The same thing. So yeah, that's a really good point, Jim, that LinkedIn has tremendous potential. Yeah, I just can't say enough about it. I mean, Anger and I have been talking more and more about this, about how much opportunity there is. So, and using video, but capitalize, like, they go together. What we're both talking about, it's connected, right? The getting your profile up, doing some engagement on other people's pages as well. You don't just have to post. And then, how can you start incorporating video as well? So, and getting on podcasts.
Right.
Yeah, lots of. So I want to just go through a couple things. We've talked about audio. We've talked about, backdrops. We talked about all the pieces. And this also is when you're coming to be a guest on a show. If you are a manufacturer and you're going to a conference, or a convention, it's also important. I will say this, Jim and I were talking about this earlier. If they have any opportunity to do anything virtually, jump on that. Even if, because when people are searching for things, they're going to find you that way, because not everybody may be at the show. They're and this has happened to me. I've been on a site searching around, and I stumble upon someone's, virtual booth. And I'll tell you this, very few people are taking advantage of it, and most of it's not very good. So repurposing content. Let's talk a little bit about that. And then we will start to wrap up. So we have just about 12 more minutes. So.
Yeah, so I think repurposing, and there's lots of ways to do it. For those that have a budget, I would recommend the tool Lately, because Lately will take your video, chop it up using artificial intelligence, and then you can take those video clips with the words that went along with that clip, put it on Twitter, put it on LinkedIn. I think also, though, there's other video tools. It'll take you longer, but you could, when you're, as an example, maybe Gail doesn't do it, but maybe because she has a producer, Ingor would say, okay, at this timestamp, Gail said this. All right, now when we go into the video, we're going to make a clip for that, right? So writing, kind of putting down time of when things happen makes it easier after the fact to take that stuff, repurpose it. There's all kinds of tools that you can use with your phone. I would say some even with your desktop, but sometimes, and that's what I love about the Apple ecosystem, is I could take a clip, I could airdrop it to my phone, then I can upload it to my Instagram or my TikTok. Some of these scheduling programs now too are adding, features like with Reels. You can take, schedule Reels now. So maybe you can do it all on your desktop. I know Agorapulse just started the ability to schedule Reels, and I know some others have as well. But find those key nuggets from that longer video, share the link to the full version so that people can kind of see the rest of the story. Because what happens is you create this great content and then you go on to the next thing. Well, this content for you is a potential evergreen source.
Mhm.
So it's not like you want to kind of repurpose it on LinkedIn all the time, right? Because that people would start to get it. But these other platforms where maybe folks are. That's where Twitter, right? Instagram, TikTok are great places to do that. Because, and I'm not a big TikToker. I'm gonna leave that to Gail, but I think those short clips can definitely drive traffic back, because you're building awareness, right? You're building that so people will like you and people will trust you. And that's where repurposing can be so powerful.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I will say again, because it's come up now, I know Chris Stone mentioned about my TikTok. And it's interesting because TikTok for me originally was a testing place. If I'm going to work with anyone on social media, marketing, digital, I wanted to at least understand it. And then I realized it kind of fits in with my personality because it's fun, it's lip sync. And I used to, way back in the day, at one point, I was going to go into the theater world, right? I know, surprising, right? So TikTok is sort of like my place to have fun and explore. And for people who want to check me out to be a keynote speaker, motivational speaker, come in, they can see, what will I bring to the stage? And, I still have all the depth. I can come in and talk about certain issues, but how can I make it a little more fun? And that's my brand and my style. So that's how TikTok came about. And now I do. But what I didn't expect was the number of people, like a Chris Stone, like, what? He knows I'm on TikTok. It's funny how all of a sudden now there's other people outside because there's a lot of, just like on LinkedIn. So I'm going to do a little pitch here about the power of LinkedIn again. A lot of people are watching you that you know, no idea that are watching and following you. And that's what's happening with me on TikTok. So it just confirms that belief and that understanding. And the same thing with, everything you're doing, Jim, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people know you from someone else comment this, that you are doing so many things. It's because, and you may not even know some of these people that are watching you and may pop up and say, hey, want to book you to do some production. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, and Inger just, put in the chat about the lurkers. There are a ton of lurkers out there. I know, more so when we were would do things more in person as far as networking. I would have people come up to me as like, oh, I love your live stream on LinkedIn. Or I'm like, what? Because I've never seen them make a reaction or a comment on a live show, but they're watching, right? They're watching you. And so they may become a customer 2-3 years from now, but you're building that trust by having consistency of being out there.
I was once at a hockey game and I had someone yell out, like I was walking down the corridor, someone yells, hey, GailNow. And I looked around, did not know this person, but he was higher up in one of our media organizations. And I got to know him. He was an amazing contact app. And he just yelled out GailNow and I looked around. And so yes, I did not even know that he was following me and it was through Twitter. It was a lot of people, because I do post a lot more on Twitter too, like a mix of things, of everything from cycling to business and what I love about Twitter is that it's so diverse that way. You can, I just found out I can froth oat milk. Like that was, so anytime I have one of those moments of, oh, this is cool, I'm going to share this on Twitter. Cause I bought this, the silk coconut milk and it doesn't froth. Oat milk froths and it doesn't have a taste. I don't like almond milk. So I'm trying to find a non-dairy and oat milk. Anyways, there we go. There's a little tip of the day from.
Nice.
All right. Let me go through here. So we've talked about your work that you do with virtual, you do behind the scenes production. You're also on camera. We probably won't get as much into this today, but you can maybe drop a link to your deal casters because that's a fascinating. We could talk a whole hour just about that. And maybe, we might have you back at some point to talk. Maybe you and Chris are talking about deal casters and Amazon and how it can be used in e-commerce. Because a lot of people in manufacturing don't realize, I didn't know this. You can manufacturers sell parts through Amazon. You can go find mold making parts. I did not know that. I just thought it was bike supplies but okay, Amazon has everything. And yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that. We've had some companies contact us. We'll be like, hey, can you do it? It's like, I'm not going to do a video on something you hang on your garage wall to, store tools. I don't have a garage. That's part of it.
Yeah. Anger just wrote, what? That's crazy. I guess, yes, Amazon does do everything. And this to me was, of course, when I heard this, because I had another client one time that was doing more parts for parts makers. And someone said, oh, and I went and searched, and wow, like I was blown away. So anybody listening in the manufacturing world of parts, if you want it, like you can sell anything. And I just bought a new bike rack, and I dealt with the company. I'll give a shout out to them. They're not paying me to do anything of this, but Swagman. And I spoke to a great woman at customer service, but it came down to, should I go through Amazon or buy through them? And it actually Amazon, because it would come in quicker, and the return, she actually said, their return policy is better. So yes, interesting what is available. And as I said, that could be a whole other discussion. We'll talk about that, talking about and make sure we invite some people in the e-commerce world maybe to come out and hear about how they can sell parts through Amazon. Okay, Jim, I do want to talk about, we've talked also, so transferable skills. So I did promote that you doing things the Marines way. What would you say are some things, what are your top transferable skills that you've brought in from your previous life as a Marine into what you're doing now?
I would say a big part of it is the adaptability. We in Marines, we adapt, we overcome. Change is inevitable, right? People fight change. And I think that that's, like even when, the pandemic happened, right? I went through a hurricane in 2018, right? It was pretty impactful on my business at the time, because I was doing most of my business locally. It's like, you know what? I can't make myself to where I'm focused on, if you want to call it hyper local, right? I do stuff that I can teach anywhere in the world as long as somebody has an internet connection. I think that just having that mindset of like, okay, we just got to go on to the next thing and not, get caught up in the past, right? You always got to be charging ahead, making a decision, right? Because I think sometimes people spend so much time wanting to gather information, right? Making a decision with, less information is more important than making no decision at all, right? Because if you don't make a decision, goes back to change, right? The change is going to happen. So you're going to miss out on opportunities because you keep, hesitating to, in a sense, pull the trigger, right? Just, you got to go for it. And we learn from our mistakes, right? My biggest thing when I was in the Marines was, and at least fortunately, it wasn't involving, people's lives, so to speak, but don't make the same mistake twice, right?
Yes.
It's okay to make a mistake, but don't make the same mistake twice. And that gets into systems, processes, making sure you have a checklist. We do that, because in the military, one of the things we do too is we train to take the next person's job. Okay. And so sometimes, that's the thing you have to think about is, how do I get prepared, or if I have people working for me, are they ready to take on that next person's job if something happens to them? So you can apply that as well to your business. Is like, if you're the one that does everything and something happens to you, then what? Right? Even in your situation, if Inger is not available, are you able to run the show? Or does the show not happen? Right? Those are the sort of things that, from a training mindset that that you have to do. And so I think that's even with live streams, like you were talking about as a guest, right? You know in advance, okay, I've got to have a professional headshot. I've got to have a bio. I've got to have, what is my area of expertise? What are the questions? Where do I want people to find me? Those sort of things. So that becomes a system, right? This is my, kind of my one, some people might call it a PR guide or one sheet. So those are things I brought over from being in the Marines, and then, being in a leadership position. I'm not afraid to say no. I'm not worried about everybody liking me, because sometimes being a leader is about doing the right thing, not the popular thing.
I love that. That is great way also to wrap up the show. And just one last thing, because we're actually working to keep the show under 1 hour. This is for a whole bunch of reasons. You probably know there's some logistics to that as well with Streamer, but how do you exercise your curious mind?
I read every day. I listen to podcasts. I try things, experiment with things. I think it's I feel like that's the other thing. Like some people talk about retirement. I don't know that I can ever. I mean, I've already retired once, but I don't know that I could ever retire because I think once we stop doing something that keeps our mind engaged, I feel like that's when you start to die. I mean, not that we're going to live forever, but I want to live my life to the fullest, right? Don't take anything for granted. We can't change the past and tomorrow's not promised. So, you know, if you keep putting stuff off, it definitely will have an impact. So yeah, and I try to get better 1% every day. That's my big thing as well.
I love that. And I am a fellow, love listening to podcasts and just listen to, so the Tim and Jim show, there's Dealcasters live. And you had another, you're speaking at agency. Oh yes. Agency Summit with Agorapulse. So we'll drop that link into the comments as well. And yeah, I want to thank you again, Jim. This was amazing. I'm going to have you go to the green room as I sign off.
All right. Thanks. Great to see you.
Thanks, Jim. Well, what an amazing guest. Jim was on a previous show. He came on one day recently, last minute to stop by. He's a great person with so many insights about marketing. I loved his information about the correlation, what he learned from the Marines. Transferable skills are so important. What we bring from our past lives or past work is important. As a recovering journalist, it has helped me with the suit up part as well, because it's using curiosity. And the sign up, you have to have the right mindset. Suit up is doing the research and then showing up. And for everyone in manufacturing, or if you know anybody in manufacturing that wants some help or assistance with getting their LinkedIn set up, as Jim and I talked about, that is also so crucial to make sure it's optimized, ready to go. And then you can start expanding into the larger digital marketing world. And there are so many opportunities using live, using video. As I said, so many opportunities and potential to do many great things in the wonderful world of manufacturing. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Over the next couple weeks, one of the shows, Inger is going to be joining me, and I'm also going to be, there'll be 1 week we might be just having while I'm on vacation. So, but stay tuned because we'll have still lots of great content to share. We might be doing a replay. And I want to thank everybody for showing up today and supporting Jim, because there are going to be some links. You'll want to follow him, connect with him on LinkedIn. He's on a few different platforms as well. Check out the Tim and Jim show, which is every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Always has great guests, great information. And today he had Chris Stone on, so you'll want to go listen to that on replay, because it talked about, again, about how to reuse some content. Okay, thanks everyone, and I will see you next week.